Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Rowan Maddox stood at his desk, staring at the email notification that had just arrived. Another project meeting scheduled without him. The third one this week that he scrolled through the attached agenda. His spring collection designs were listed under Creative Strategy Review, with Bryson Quaid's name as the presenter. Not his name. Bryson's. The coffee in his mug had gone cold hours ago, but Rowan didn't notice. His dark eyes scanned the conference room through the glass partition where Cade Holbrook gestured animatedly to a group of executives. Charts and mood boards filled the presentation screen. Rowan recognized every design, every color palette, every concept. His work, his vision, but his name was nowhere to be seen. Rowan. Talia Knox appeared beside his desk, her voice careful. She held a tablet against her chest like armor. "Did you get the meeting invite for tomorrow?" "Which one?" His voice came out flat. "The brand direction review. Cade wants to present the new campaign strategy to the board." Rowan turned his chair to face her. Talia's brown eyes darted away, then back to his face. She knew. She'd seen the credits on those mood boards, seen his concepts attributed to others. "My strategy," he said. "Rowan, my concepts. My color theory. My typography choices." Each word came out precise, controlled. Even the product placement angles I sketched out 6 months ago. Talia shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Maybe you should talk to Cade." "Maybe I should." Rowan saved his work and closed his laptop. The creative department had emptied out for lunch, leaving only the hum of computers and the distant sound of traffic from the Seattle streets below. He walked across the open workspace toward Cade's corner office, his footsteps silent on the polished concrete. Cade's door was open. The CEO sat behind his desk, scrolling through his phone while eating a salad from an expensive downtown restaurant. His gray suit was perfectly tailored, his silver hairstyle with mathematical precision. Everything about Cade Holbrook screamed corporate polish. "Rowan." Cade looked up with a practiced smile. "Good timing. I was just reviewing the presentation for tomorrow. The one featuring my work." Cade set down his fork. "Your work? I think you mean the team's work. Collaboration is what makes this company special." Collaboration. Rowan stepped into the office, but didn't sit in the offered chair. "Is that what we're calling it when my designs go to market without my input?" "Your designs are solid, Rowan. Really solid." Cade leaned back in his leather chair. "But we need leadership that can scale. You're brilliant at the creative side, but when it comes to business strategy, market positioning, stakeholder management." He shrugged. "You're just not that." The words hit like ice water, but Rowan's expression didn't change. "Not that. Look, this isn't personal. The board brought me in to professionalize this company. Take it from boutique to major player. That means making hard decisions about roles and responsibilities. Hard decisions." Cade's smile widened, mistaking Rowan's calm for acceptance. "I'm glad you understand. The creative department will continue to be vital, obviously, but the strategic direction, the market positioning, the brand evolution, that's executive territory now." Rowan nodded slowly. "And tomorrow's presentation?" "Bryson's been working closely with the product team. He understands the retail landscape, the logistics challenges, the margin requirements. All the pieces that turn pretty designs into profitable products. The designs he's presenting. Who created them? The team, Rowan. The collaborative team effort we've built here." Rowan looked around the office. Framed photos of Cade with various business leaders lined the walls. Awards from marketing associations. Not a single piece of creative work in sight. "I see." Rowan turned toward the door. "I'm glad we could clear the air," Cade called after him. "Communication is key to any successful partnership." Rowan paused at the threshold. "Partnership. Exactly. We all want what's best for Halo District." "Of course we do." Rowan walked back to his desk. The creative department was still empty. He opened his laptop and began typing, his fingers moving across the keyboard with mechanical precision. Not angry keystrokes. Not frustrated. Just methodical, purposeful motion. Talia returned from lunch an hour later. She found Rowan exactly where she'd left him, staring at his screen. "How did it go with Cade?" "Productive." Rowan didn't look up from his work. Rowan, I know this is hard. The way things have been changing around here, the way your contributions are being overlooked. I was going to say undervalued. Now he did look at her. Is that what you call it when someone steals your work and presents it as their own? Talia's face flushed. I don't agree with how this is being handled, but you're not going to say anything. It's complicated. The political dynamics here, the board pressure, it's not complicated, Talia. It's theft. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. Around them, other employees were returning from lunch, filling the workspace with conversation and keyboard clicks. Normal office sounds. Normal office politics. But nothing about this felt normal to Rowan, but he spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing contracts. Legal documents. Intellectual property agreements. The original papers he'd signed when Halo District first hired him, back when the company was 3 people in a shared workspace and big dreams about disrupting the fashion industry. Back when they needed him. The fine print told an interesting story. Creative oversight provisions. Technology licensing clauses. Vendor relationship controls. All the boring legal language that most creative directors ignored. Rowan had never ignored boring details. The conference room buzzed with anticipation. Board members, department heads, and key investors filled the chairs around the polished table. Vera Lachlan sat near the head, her steel-gray hair pulled back severely, her attention focused on the tablet in front of her. She'd been one of Halo's earliest investors, back when Rowan's underground streetwear designs had caught the attention of fashion insiders. That felt like a lifetime ago. Rowan took a seat near the back, his laptop closed, his hands folded. He watched Bryson Quaid set up the presentation, arranging mood boards and product samples with theatrical precision. Bryson wore an expensive black suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. His confidence filled the room like cologne. Before we begin, Kate announced, standing at the head of the table, I want to acknowledge the incredible team effort that went into developing this new brand direction. Fashion is collaborative by nature, and this presentation represents the best of what we can achieve when we work together. Polite applause. Rowan didn't clap. Talia sat across the room, her laptop open, ready to document key decisions for her upcoming PR campaigns. She glanced at Rowan once, then looked away quickly. As many of you know, Kate continued, the fashion landscape is evolving rapidly. Consumer expectations, market dynamics, distribution channels, everything is changing. To stay competitive, Halo District needs to evolve too. The lights dimmed. Bryson activated the presentation screen. Which brings me to our rebrand for a new generation. The first slide appeared. Clean typography, sophisticated color palette, minimalist design philosophy that screamed luxury without shouting. It was beautiful work. It was Rowan's work. Our new visual identity represents a maturation of the Halo brand, Bryson said, advancing to the next slide. We've moved beyond the underground aesthetic toward something more accessible, more scalable, more profitable. More slides. Product shots that Rowan had art-directed. Marketing concepts he'd developed. Even the packaging design he'd sketched on napkins during late-night strategy sessions. The spring collection embodies this evolution, Bryson continued. High-quality materials, innovative design, sophisticated marketing. We're projecting a 40% increase in revenue over last year's numbers. Vera Lachlan leaned forward. These designs are exceptional. Very mature work. Thank you, Bryson said. The creative strategy team has really outdone themselves. Rowan's laptop remained closed. 20 minutes into the presentation, Cade stepped forward again. Before we discuss implementation timelines, I need to address a personnel change that will streamline our operations going forward. The room grew quiet. Effective immediately, we'll be parting ways with Rowan Maddox, our former creative director. Gasps around the table. Vera's eyes snapped to Rowan's face. Talia's hands froze above her keyboard. This decision wasn't made lightly, Cade continued. Rowan's contributions to Halo have been significant. But as we scale the business, we need leadership that can navigate complex market dynamics, manage stakeholder relationships, and execute at an enterprise level. Bryson nodded gravely. Creative vision is important, But operational excellence is what separates successful brands from struggling boutiques. More murmurs. Some board members looked uncomfortable. Others nodded in agreement. Rowan stood up. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to him as he walked to the front of the conference room. His movements were calm, deliberate. When he reached the presentation area, he placed both hands on the table and looked directly at Cade. "You're firing me. We're transitioning to a new organizational structure. You're firing me for the work I created." Cade's smile faltered slightly. "Rowan, please don't make this harder than it needs to be." Rowan reached into his pocket and pulled out his company ID badge. He set it on the table with a soft click. "Then I suggest you explain to the board why the spring line goes offline in exactly 9 minutes." Silence. "Excuse me," Vera said. Rowan checked his watch. 8 minutes and 43 seconds. Bryson laughed nervously. "What's he talking about?" "The vendor relationships," Rowan said, his voice carrying easily across the room. "The e-commerce integration, the marketing automation systems, the retailer fulfillment protocols." He looked around the table. Did anyone actually read the technical infrastructure documentation? Cade's face had gone pale. "Rowan, let's discuss this privately." "No need." Rowan stepped back from the table. "You have 8 minutes and 21 seconds to figure out how to run a fashion company without the person who built its technical foundation." He walked toward the door. "You're bluffing," Bryson called after him. Rowan paused at the threshold. "Am I?" He left the conference room. Behind him, urgent voices erupted in discussion. Someone shouted for the IT department. Chairs scraped against the floor as people scrambled for their phones. Rowan walked to his desk, packed his personal items into a small box, and headed for the elevator. His watch showed 6 minutes remaining. The elevator descended slowly, stopping at each floor to pick up employees returning from lunch meetings. Rowan stood in the back corner, his box of personal items balanced against his hip. Around him, conversations flowed about weekend plans and project deadlines, normal office life. His watch showed 4 minutes. The elevator reached the lobby. Rowan walked past the reception desk, through the glass doors, and onto the Seattle sidewalk. Gray clouds gathered overhead, threatening afternoon rain. Traffic moved in its usual pattern. Pedestrians hurried past with coffee cups and briefcases. Nothing had changed. Yet 0.3 minutes, Rowan found a coffee shop across the street and ordered a black coffee. He took a seat by the window where he could see the Halo District building. 43 floors of steel and glass, housing one of the fastest-growing fashion companies in the Pacific Northwest. 0.2 minutes. His phone buzzed. Text message from Cade. "Let's talk. This doesn't have to end badly." Rowan deleted the message without responding. 0.1 minute. He sipped his coffee and watched the building across the street. Somewhere on the 37th floor, a conference room full of executives was probably still debating whether he was serious. They'd find out soon enough. 0.30 seconds. Rowan's phone rang. Talia's name appeared on the screen. He let it go to voicemail. 0.15 seconds. Through the coffee shop window, the Halo District building looked exactly the same. No visible signs of crisis. No emergency vehicles. Just another corporate tower on another Wednesday afternoon. Rowan's phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, email alerts. He ignored them all and continued watching the building. Inside that conference room, computers were crashing. E-commerce servers were returning error messages. Marketing videos were disappearing from scheduled launches. Retail partners were discovering that their shipment queues had frozen. The spring collection Rowan's designs, presented under Bryson's name, was going dark. His phone rang again. This time, it was Vera Lachlan. "Rowan." Her voice was sharp when he answered. "Vera, what did you do?" "I left. The systems are failing. Everything connected to the spring launch is offline." "Interesting. Don't play games with me. We have retailers waiting for shipments. Marketing campaigns scheduled to go live. Millions of dollars on the line." Rowan took another sip of coffee. "I'm sure Bryson can handle it. He understands a retail landscape so well. Fix this. Now. I don't work for Halo District anymore. Remember?" Cade made that very clear. A pause. "Then, what do you want?" "Nothing you can give me. Everyone has a price. Rowan." "Not everyone." He hung up. Across the street, He could see people moving quickly past the windows on the 37th floor. Urgent gestures. Phones pressed to ears. The kind of controlled panic that happens when a company realizes it's in serious trouble. Rowan's phone buzzed with another text from Cade. Name your price. We can work this out. Another deletion. The rain started, light drops against the coffee shop window. Rowan finished his coffee and stood to leave. His phone continued buzzing with calls and messages, but he didn't look at any of them. He had work to do. 3 weeks later, Rowan sat in his new workspace, a converted warehouse in Georgetown, south of downtown Seattle. The space was raw, industrial, all exposed brick and steel beams. Nothing like the polished corporate environment at Halo District. He preferred it this way. His laptop displayed news articles and industry blogs. The fashion press was beginning to notice Halo's problems. Delayed product launches, quality control issues, confused messaging from their marketing department. Halo District's spring collection. Where did the magic go? Read one headline. Another, fashion insiders ask, what happened to Halo's creative vision? Rowan scrolled through the comments. Fashion bloggers who had praised Halo's previous collections were now criticizing the new direction. The designs that Bryson had commissioned to replace Rowan's work were technically competent but soulless. Safe, corporate, everything that Halo District used to stand against. His phone rang. The number was blocked, but he recognized the voice immediately. You're destroying us. Cade's usual polish had cracked. He sounded tired. Am I? The retail partners are pulling back. Our Q2 projections are shot. The board is asking questions I can't answer. Maybe you should have thought about that before you stole my work. Your work? You were an employee, Rowan. Everything you created belonged to the company. Did it? Rowan leaned back in his chair. You should read those contracts more carefully, especially the intellectual property clauses. Silence on the other end. The designs you presented, Rowan continued. The ones you attributed to Bryson? Those were created under specific licensing agreements. Agreements that terminated when you fired me. That's not how employment law works. It's exactly how contract law works. And those weren't employment contracts, Cade. They were creative partnership agreements. Very different legal frameworks. More silence. What do you want? Cade's voice was barely above a whisper. Nothing from you. Rowan hung up. He returned to his work. Design sketches covered the table in front of him. New concepts, new directions, new possibilities. These weren't safe corporate designs. They were the underground aesthetic that had made his reputation before Halo ever existed. Raw, authentic, uncompromising. The doorbell chimed. Rowan looked up to see a delivery driver with a package. Studiomatics. That's right. Rowan signed for the package and closed the door. Inside were fabric samples from a mill in North Carolina. High-quality materials, the kind that most fast fashion companies couldn't afford to use. But Studiomatics wasn't most companies. He'd registered the LLC 3 months ago, quietly building relationships with manufacturers and suppliers while still working at Halo. Not because he was planning to leave, but because he was planning to survive. Rowan had learned early in life that institutions couldn't be trusted. Foster homes that promised stability. Schools that promised education. Employers that promised partnership. They all had their own agendas, their own priorities. The only person he could trust was himself. His laptop chimed with a new email. A boutique retailer in Los Angeles wanted to discuss carrying Studiomatics designs. Word was spreading through the fashion underground. The network of stylists and buyers and trend forecasters who remembered Rowan's work from before Halo District sanitized it. They were hungry for something real again. The Melrose Avenue boutique was exactly what Rowan had imagined. Small, curated, owned by someone who cared more about artistic integrity than quarterly earnings. The kind of place where fashion happened before it became commerce. Your timing is perfect, said Elena Vasquez, the store's owner. She was examining one of Rowan's jacket designs, running her fingers over the stitching details. Our customers are tired of the corporate fashion machine. They want something with soul again. Rowan nodded. How many pieces can you take? 50 to start. If they move, we'll double the order for next month. They'll move. Elena smiled. Confident. Experienced. She was right about the timing. 3 days after the Studiomatics drop went live, Elena called with news. Sold out. Completely. Customers were asking about future releases, about custom pieces, about the designer behind the label. The fashion blogs noticed too. Underground style sites that had ignored Halo District's corporate pivots suddenly had headlines about the return of Rowan Maddox and Studiomatics, fashion's best-kept secret. Within a week, other boutiques were calling. New York, San Francisco, even international inquiries from Tokyo and London. Rowan's phone buzzed with a text from Talia. Saw the Style Underground piece about Studiomatics. Incredible work. Can we talk? He deleted the message without responding. 2 more boutiques placed orders. A fashion photographer wanted to shoot the collection for an editorial spread. A streaming service documentary crew reached out about featuring Studiomatics in their series about independent designers. Everything Halo District had lost, Studiomatics was gaining. Rowan was working late in his Georgetown warehouse when his phone rang. Unknown number. This is Bryson Quaid. Rowan said nothing. I think we got off on the wrong foot, Bryson continued. The transition was handled poorly. Everyone admits that. But there's no reason we can't find a mutually beneficial arrangement. Mutually beneficial. Halo needs creative direction. Studiomatics needs distribution infrastructure. We could work out some kind of consulting agreement. You fired me, stole my work, and presented it under your name. Now you want to hire me back as a consultant. Business is business, Rowan. Nothing personal. Everything is personal. Rowan hung up. He returned to his sketches. The new collection was taking shape, darker, more aggressive than anything he'd done at Halo. These weren't designs meant to appeal to focus groups or market research. They were statements, declarations, war paint. His laptop chimed with a notification. Someone had posted a comparison on Instagram. Recent Halo District pieces next to Studiomatics designs. The contrast was brutal. Halo's new work looked corporate, calculated, soulless. Studiomatics looked like what fashion was supposed to be. Art you could wear. The post had thousands of likes and hundreds of comments. Fashion insiders, style bloggers, even customers who had bought Halo pieces in the past. The consensus was clear. Halo had lost its edge, and everyone knew where to find it now. Vera Laughlin's office occupied an entire floor of a downtown Seattle high-rise. From her windows, she could see Elliott Bay, the Olympic Mountains, and most of the city's business district. It was a view that cost millions to obtain and reminded everyone who visited exactly how much power she wielded. Today, that view wasn't bringing her any comfort. The quarterly numbers are a disaster, she said into her phone. Revenue down 18%. Market share declining. Retail partners questioning their commitments. The voice on the other end belonged to Marcus Chun, another board member and early Halo investor. His concerns mirrored her own. The Maddox situation, Marcus said. It's gotten out of hand. That's an understatement. Vera pulled up another browser tab, showing Studiomatics' latest press coverage. The fashion media was treating Rowan like a returning hero. We're hemorrhaging credibility. What does Cade propose to do about it? Cade proposes that we ride it out. Says the market will stabilize once consumers adjust to our new direction. And you believe that? Vera looked at the sales reports spread across her desk. I believe in numbers. And the numbers say we're in trouble. She hung up and dialed another number. This one went to voicemail. Talia, it's Vera. Call me back. We need to discuss the PR strategy around recent developments. 10 minutes later, her phone rang. Vera. Talia's voice was guarded. I need to understand something. How much did you know about Rowan's departure? The real story, not Cade's version. A pause. What do you mean? I mean the circumstances. The way it was handled. The aftermath. I don't think I should. Talia, I'm asking as a board member and primary investor. The company is bleeding money and reputation. I need facts. Another pause, longer this time. Then, Rowan tried to warn us about the technical dependencies, the IP issues, the vendor relationships. Cade dismissed everything he said. Warned you how? Emails, documentation, even a formal memo about risks to the spring launch. Cade buried it all. Vera's pen snapped in her hand. Are you telling me this crisis was predictable? It was predicted by the person who built those systems. And Cade fired him anyway. Cade and Bryson thought they could manage without him. They were wrong. Do you have copies of this documentation? Silence on the phone. Talia, I might have some emails saved. Forward them to me. All of them. Vera, if this gets back to Cade. Cade works for the board, not the other way around. Forward the emails. Vera hung up and stared out at her million-dollar view. The sun was setting over Puget Sound, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Beautiful, peaceful, unlike the crisis consuming her investment. Her computer chimed with new messages. Talia had been thorough. Email threads showing Rowan's repeated warnings about system vulnerabilities. Technical documentation outlining risks to major product launches. Meeting notes where his concerns were dismissed as creative temperament and resistance to change. But the most damaging item wasn't a document. It was an audio file. Vera clicked play. Bryson's voice filled her office speakers. The difficult genius routine gets old fast. Once we launch the spring collection, we won't need him anymore. Cade's voice. He built the creative foundation. Now we build the business infrastructure around it. Bryson again. Exactly. Cut out the difficult genius after launch. Keep the profitable systems. Both men laughing. Vera saved the file and forwarded it to 3 other board members. Then she started making phone calls. The law offices of Patterson, Mills & Associates occupied 2 floors of a downtown Seattle tower. Their conference room had a view of the harbor and walls lined with legal awards. This was where companies came to fight wars. Rowan sat across from Cade, Bryson, and their legal team. His own attorney, Sarah Kim, spread documents across the polished table with surgical precision. The intellectual property violations are extensive, Sarah said, her voice crisp and professional. Mr. Maddox's original creative partnership agreements specifically retained certain rights that were never properly transferred to Halo District. Cade's lawyer, a nervous man in an expensive suit, shuffled through papers. Our understanding was that standard employment contracts covered all creative output. Your understanding was incorrect. Sarah slid a document across the table. The original agreements were structured as creative partnerships, not employment contracts. Very different legal frameworks. Bryson leaned forward. This is ridiculous. Everything created during company time belongs to the company. Not when the creator retains specific licensing rights, Sarah replied. Rights that were terminated when Mr. Maddox was dismissed without cause. Without cause. Cade's face was flushed. We had every right to restructure our organization based on stolen intellectual property that you falsely attributed to Mr. Quaid. Sarah produced another document. We have audio evidence of your intent to appropriate Mr. Maddox's work. The room went silent. Cade's lawyer whispered something in his ear. Bryson's confident posture deflated. What do you want? Cade asked finally. Immediate cessation of all unauthorized use of Mr. Maddox's designs, Sarah said. Public acknowledgement of the true creative ownership. And compensation for damages to his professional reputation. That would destroy our spring launch. Your spring launch was already destroyed. 3 weeks ago. We're simply making it official. Rowan spoke for the first time. You stole my work. Fired me. Then watched your company collapse because you couldn't function without what you'd stolen. His voice was calm, matter of fact. This isn't negotiation. It's consequences. Cade's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went pale. Problem? Sarah asked. The board, Cade muttered. Emergency meeting. I'm sure they're eager to discuss recent developments. Rowan said 2 hours later, Vera Lachlan called a vote of no confidence. The motion passed unanimously. Cade Hallbrook was removed as CEO, effective immediately. Bryson Quaid submitted his resignation before he could be fired. The corporate guillotine had fallen. Talia found Rowan at his Georgetown warehouse 3 days after the board meeting. She stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the afternoon light, looking smaller than he remembered. Can I come in? Rowan didn't look up from his work. It's a free country. She stepped inside, taking in a raw space, the design sketches covering every surface, the prototype garments hanging from metal racks. This was what Halo District's creative department had looked like in the early days, before corporate polish sanitized everything. I wanted to apologize, she said. For what? For not speaking up. For staying quiet when I knew what was happening was wrong. Rowan set down his pencil and looked at her. You knew. Of course I knew. Everyone knew. We just chose not to see it. Chose not to see it. Talia moved closer to his work table. I was scared. The company was growing so fast, changing so much. I thought if I kept my head down, stayed professional, things would work out. Things did work out. For you. No, they didn't. Her voice cracked slightly. Watching what they did to you, what I let them do, I haven't slept well in months. Rowan picked up his pencil again. Sleep is overrated. I want to help. With Studiomatics. I know PR, marketing, brand development. I could. No. The word cut through the warehouse like a blade. Rowan, please. Let me make this right. He looked at her again, his dark eyes flat and unforgiving. You watched me burn. Stood there and watched while they stole everything I built. You had a choice, Talia. You chose them. I was trying to survive. So was I. The difference is I didn't sacrifice anyone else to do it. Tears gathered in her eyes. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. Some mistakes don't get forgiven. Everyone deserves a second chance. Rowan returned to his sketches. I don't rebuild with people who watch me burn. Talia stood there for a long moment, waiting for him to say something else. When he didn't, she walked to the door. I'm sorry, she said one last time. Rowan didn't respond. He continued working until her footsteps faded and the warehouse was quiet again. Forgiveness was a luxury he couldn't afford. Trust, once broken, stayed broken. Loyalty, once betrayed, couldn't be reclaimed. These weren't philosophical positions. They were survival strategies learned in foster homes and juvenile shelters, reinforced by years of disappointment and betrayal. The only person who had never let him down was himself. 1 year later, Rowan sat in a different conference room. This one belonged to Sterling Capital Management, a private investment firm that specialized in distressed assets. The view looked out over Lake Union, where tech companies and creative agencies competed for space in converted warehouses. The acquisition is complete, said David Sterling, the firm's managing partner. Halo District is now officially part of the Sterling portfolio. Rowan nodded. Full ownership, 73%. We bought out Vera Lachlan and most of the original investors. The company was hemorrhaging money so quickly, they were eager to cut their losses. And they don't know about my involvement. Shell companies within shell companies. Your investment is completely obscured. As far as anyone knows, Sterling Capital is just another private equity firm looking for turnaround opportunities. David slid a folder across the table. Inside were financial reports, organizational charts, and strategic recommendations for Halo District's future. The company that had fired Rowan was now his to control. What's your plan? David asked. Rowan flipped through the documents. Revenue was down 60% from the previous year. They'd lost most of their retail partnerships. The creative department had been gutted and rebuilt twice. What remained was a hollow shell trading on past reputation. Controlled demolition, Rowan said. Meaning, strip the valuable assets. Transfer them to Studiomatics. Let the rest collapse naturally. David raised an eyebrow. That's a significant write-off. I'm not in this for the money. Then what are you in it for? Rowan closed the folder and stood to leave. Justice. 6 months later, Halo District quietly filed for bankruptcy. The fashion press covered it as another casualty of changing market conditions and corporate mismanagement. Industry analysts pointed to leadership failures and strategic missteps. None of them knew the real story. Studiomatics, meanwhile, had grown from a boutique label to a recognized brand. Fashion weeks in New York and Paris. Collaborations with high-end retailers. Celebrity endorsements from people who understood the difference between authentic design and corporate product. Rowan received an invitation to speak at a fashion industry panel. The topic was navigating creative challenges in corporate environments. The irony wasn't lost on him that he accepted. The panel took place at a hotel in downtown Seattle. Fashion executives, creative directors, and business school students filled the audience. Rowan sat with 3 other panelists, all successful designers who had built careers in large companies. Rowan, the moderator said, you've experienced both sides of the fashion industry corporate structure and independent creation. What advice would you give to young designers trying to navigate those environments? Rowan leaned forward to the microphone. The room grew quiet. The minute you flinch, they take everything. So you don't flinch. Ever. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Could you elaborate on that? The moderator asked. Companies want your creativity, but they don't want you to have power. They'll promise partnership while planning your replacement. They'll take credit for your work while questioning your value. Rowan's voice carried easily across the room. If you flinch, if you accept their terms, if you compromise your vision, if you trust them to do right by you, they'll take everything and leave you with nothing. A student in the front row raised her hand. So how do you protect yourself? You never give them everything. You keep control of what matters. You plan for betrayal. And when they show you who they really are, you believe them the first time. That sounds cynical, another panelist said. That sounds realistic, Rowan replied. Cynicism implies disappointment. This is just pattern recognition. After the panel, reporters approached him for follow-up interviews. Fashion bloggers wanted to discuss his philosophy on creative independence. Business students requested advice on negotiating employment contracts. Rowan declined most interviews, but agreed to speak with one reporter from a major fashion publication. Looking back on your time at Halo District, the reporter asked, would you do anything differently? Rowan considered the question. Through the hotel window, he could see the Seattle skyline, including the building where Halo District used to operate. The space was empty now, available for lease to some other company with big dreams and bigger ambitions. Nothing, he said finally. The minute you flinch, they take everything. So you don't flinch. Ever. The reporter scribbled notes. And now, what's next for Studiomatics? We keep building. We keep creating. We never look back. Because looking back was for people who had something to regret. Rowan didn't regret protecting his work, didn't regret refusing to compromise, didn't regret watching his enemies destroy themselves. He regretted nothing. The quiet ones, he learned long ago, were always the last men standing. Not because they were lucky, not because they were ruthless, but because they understood something that louder, more confident people often missed. Power wasn't about what you could take. It was about what you refused to give away. And Rowan Maddox had never given anything away for free.